In today's episode, we are going to look at the 6 worst deaths ever on live TV. From a child climbing onto a parade barricade during a live broadcast to a stage technician working at extreme heights around live equipment, which went wrong in the most horrifying way possible. It was November 26, 2017, in Des Moines, Iowa. The morning air carried a crisp bite as thousands gathered along the downtown parade route for the annual holiday celebration. Gray clouds hung low over the city streets, threatening light snow that never quite materialized. The asphalt remained dry, lined with metal barricades that had been set up hours earlier by municipal workers. 8-year-old Benton Vark stood among the crowd with his aunt and uncle, who had driven in from a neighboring suburb specifically for this tradition. Benton was a curious child with boundless energy, the type who asked endless questions and rarely stayed still for long. His relatives had positioned themselves near a sharp right-hand turn in the route, where they expected the best view of the approaching floats. Lightweight steel crowd control barricades with plastic stabilizing feet formed a loose perimeter between spectators and the street. As more families arrived, the crowd density increased steadily. Benton, shorter than most adults around him, climbed onto one of the barricades to see over the heads in front of him. His aunt noticed, but didn't object, as several other children were doing the same thing along the route. Local television crews had positioned cameras at various points, including one directly across from where Benton's family waited. The broadcast was being transmitted live to viewers throughout the region. Behind the cameras, the crowd continued to swell as parade time approached. The first float appeared in the distance, decorated with oversized holiday ornaments and carrying a group of performers in seasonal costumes. As it approached the turn, the truck pulling the float began to slow. The driver navigated carefully around the corner, but the physics of the turn caused the rear wheels to track wider than the front wheels, a phenomenon known as off-tracking. As the crowd pressed forward, several of the interlocked barricades shifted slightly out of alignment, inching closer to the street. Benton remained perched on the barricade near a section where the pavement met an uneven curb lip. The barrier's plastic feet began to slide on the smooth asphalt under the forward pressure of the crowd, scraping across the surface as bodies pushed from behind. As the float's rear section swung wide through the turn, 1 foot of the barricade Benton was standing on rode up over the base of an adjacent barricade that had been improperly interlocked. The workers had unknowingly mixed 2 incompatible barricade models during setup. The destabilized barrier suddenly tipped forward, sending him tumbling directly into the path of the float's rear wheels. The massive rear tire struck his lower body before he could react to the fall, the impact hidden from the driver's view by the length of the float and decorative skirting. The truck continued forward for several more feet as staff members frantically signaled for it to stop. When the float finally halted, Benton lay motionless on the asphalt. Witnesses reported seeing brief reflexive movement before he became completely still. The festive music from the float continued playing for several more seconds, an eerie soundtrack to the unfolding tragedy. Emergency responders arrived within minutes and immediately began resuscitation efforts, but Benton was pronounced dead shortly afterward due to fatal blunt force trauma to his pelvis and abdomen. The parade was immediately suspended, and the remaining floats were diverted away from the area. The subsequent investigation determined that the improperly matched barricade models, combined with the uneven pavement transition, the float's wide turning radius, and the crowd's forward pressure, had created the fatal sequence of events. The medical examiner confirmed that Benton died from massive internal injuries consistent with severe crush trauma. The incident was captured on a live broadcast feed operating on a brief transmission delay, witnessed by hundreds of spectators who had gathered for what was meant to be a joyful community celebration. It was May 3, 2016. In a regional television studio in New Jersey, the morning broadcast facility hummed with its usual pre-show activity as technicians adjusted lighting and camera operators ran final equipment checks. 31-year-old Zola Skeet had arrived early for her shift as the morning news anchor. Known for her meticulous preparation and professional demeanor, she had worked at the station for nearly 6 years, building a reputation for reliability and composure under pressure. The studio had recently undergone renovations, including the installation of a new motorized sit-stand desk at the main anchor position. The desk featured a heavy steel frame with a tempered glass surface mounted on an electric lift mechanism. The motorized system allowed anchors to adjust the desk height between seated and standing positions with the press of a button. At its lowest setting, the desk sat at standard height. At its highest, it rose to 48 inches. During the previous week, maintenance staff had noticed intermittent issues with the desk's electronic control system, occasional unresponsive buttons, and minor glitches in the motor's behavior. Since the desk still functioned, they had scheduled a thorough inspection for after the morning show. The electronic control board had developed a critical fault in its safety limiter circuit, designed to prevent the desk from descending if resistance was detected. Zola took her position behind the desk as the broadcast began. She had adjusted it to its standing height of 48 inches, preferring to anchor the morning segment on her feet. The camera framed her from the waist up against the studio's backdrop. In the control room, the director monitored multiple camera feeds while the technical crew managed audio levels. Everything appeared normal as the show commenced. As the show progressed, Zola leaned forward to reference notes on the desk surface during a transition between stories. At that moment, the faulty control board sent an erroneous signal to the lift mechanism. The desk began descending rapidly, not at its normal controlled speed, but in a catastrophic freefall as the motor disengaged and gravity took over. The heavy steel frame dropped with tremendous force. Zola, caught off balance while leaning forward, was unable to step back in time. The descending desk struck her across the upper chest and throat, driving her backward and downward. As she fell, the rigid metal edge of the desk's front crossbar caught her directly across the front of her neck. With her full body weight and the desk's momentum behind the impact, her head and shoulders struck the floor hard, but the catastrophic damage occurred as the steel crossbar compressed her throat against the resistance of her cervical spine. The descending desk edge crushed her trachea and lacerated her carotid artery. The tempered glass surface shattered into thousands of small cubes that scattered across the studio floor. The desk completed its collapse with Zola pinned beneath its frame. Blood began pooling rapidly as the carotid injury created massive internal hemorrhaging. Her airway was completely obstructed by the crushed tracheal structure. The camera continued recording for several moments before the control room cut the live feed. Studio crew members rushed onto the set immediately, attempting to lift the heavy desk frame off Zola's body. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but found her unresponsive with no pulse. Despite immediate resuscitation attempts, Zola was pronounced dead at the scene. The combination of catastrophic airway collapse and massive vascular injury had caused death within moments of the impact. The subsequent investigation revealed that the motorized desk's control board had experienced a critical electronic failure, causing the safety limiter to malfunction and allowing the desk to freefall. The medical examiner confirmed that Zola died from blunt force trauma to the neck, specifically a lacerated carotid artery and complete tracheal crush injury. The incident was captured on live television before the feed was terminated, and the station immediately suspended broadcasting pending a full safety review of all equipment. It was January 18th, 2015, at an automotive trade show in Michigan. The convention center's concrete floors stretched across thousands of square feet, filled with displays of vehicles, tools, and equipment. Fluorescent lighting illuminated the space, while the steady hum of conversations and machinery demonstrations created a constant background noise. The temperature inside remained comfortable, despite the winter weather outside. 60-year-old Irving Flagg moved through the crowd with the confident stride of someone who had spent decades working with his hands. A retired automotive technician, Irving possessed the kind of practical knowledge that came from years of troubleshooting mechanical problems. He was known among his peers as methodical and safety-conscious, traits that had served him well during his long career in various repair shops. Irving had volunteered to assist with a live demonstration of a portable hydraulic vehicle lift, the type commonly used in smaller garages and mobile repair operations. The lift was designed to raise vehicles approximately 6 feet off the ground, allowing access to the undercarriage for maintenance and inspection. The demonstration was being recorded for broadcast to viewers interested in automotive equipment. The lift system included a mechanical safety lock designed to prevent accidental lowering once a vehicle was raised. However, for this particular demonstration, the organizers had temporarily disengaged the safety mechanism to show how quickly the lift could be repositioned. This decision was made to streamline the presentation and demonstrate the equipment's versatility. A mid-sized sedan had been positioned on the lift platform and raised to its full height. The vehicle's engine was started briefly as part of the demonstration, showing that the lift could support a running vehicle safely. Camera operators positioned themselves to capture the undercarriage view that the lift provided. Irving stepped beneath the raised vehicle to point out various components visible from below. The hydraulic system maintained pressure through a series of seals and valves, but these components were subject to gradual wear and potential failure. With the mechanical safety lock disengaged, nothing prevented the platform from descending once hydraulic pressure was lost. The hydraulic system experienced a sudden pressure drop, likely due to a seal failure or valve malfunction. The lift began descending rapidly as the hydraulic fluid could no longer maintain the necessary pressure to support the vehicle's weight. Irving found himself directly beneath the falling car, with no time to move clear. The vehicle's undercarriage struck Irving's upper torso, pinning him against the concrete floor. The full weight of the sedan, approximately 3,200 pounds, compressed his chest and abdomen. His ribs fractured instantly under the immense pressure, puncturing both lungs and lacerating his heart and major blood vessels. His arms moved briefly in reflexive response before becoming still. Show staff immediately shut down the hydraulic system and turned off the vehicle's engine. Emergency medical personnel were summoned, but Irving showed no spontaneous breathing or detectable pulse upon assessment. He was pronounced dead at the scene from massive internal injuries caused by the crushing weight of the vehicle. The subsequent investigation revealed that a hydraulic seal had failed, causing the rapid loss of pressure that allowed the lift to descend. The absence of the engaged safety lock, which would have prevented the fall regardless of hydraulic failure, was identified as the critical factor that made the accident fatal. The medical examiner confirmed that Irving died from severe chest trauma and internal organ damage consistent with being crushed by a heavy vehicle. It was August 7th, 2018, at an outdoor music festival in Oregon. The main stage towered 30 feet above the ground, supported by steel trusses and rigging equipment. Evening temperatures had dropped to 72 degrees, but intermittent wind gusts swept across the venue, causing banners and loose cables to flutter unpredictably. The stage lighting created dramatic shadows that shifted with each gust. 27-year-old Nesta Prowl worked across the elevated platform with practiced efficiency. As a stage rigging technician, she possessed the technical knowledge and coordination required for working at height around heavy equipment. Nesta was known for her attention to detail and methodical safety approach, qualities that had earned her steady work in the demanding live entertainment industry. The evening's performance was being broadcast live to a regional television audience. Camera operators positioned themselves to capture performers while avoiding technical crew working behind the scenes. Nesta had been assigned to adjust a lighting clamp that had shifted during afternoon setup, a routine task requiring access to the rigging grid above the stage. A slack lighting cable had been temporarily routed behind Nesta's work position during earlier setup. The cable was attached to a motorized hoist controlling an overhead lighting truss. Due to rushed pre-show preparations, the cable had not been properly secured and formed a loose loop across the platform behind where she was working. Wind conditions had been calm during the afternoon, but as evening approached, gusts began increasing in frequency and intensity. The loose cable moved with each gust, creating a shifting hazard difficult to track while focusing on the lighting adjustment. She was not clipped into a fall arrest harness, as the task was classified as a short-duration adjustment. Nesta stepped backward while adjusting the lighting clamp, unaware that the loose cable had shifted position behind her. As she moved, her foot caught the cable loop, but the slack prevented her from immediately recognizing the entanglement. The wind gusted again, causing the cable to shift and tighten around her ankle. The motorized hoist suddenly activated as part of an automated lighting sequence, violently pulling slack out of the cable. The tension yanked Nesta sideways with force equivalent to a multi-story fall, pulling her off balance toward the platform edge. She was dragged laterally across the rigging grid before being pulled completely off the elevated structure. Her body struck a support truss during the fall, altering her trajectory and causing her to rotate headfirst toward the ground. The impact with the truss likely caused immediate unconsciousness. She fell the remaining distance and struck the concrete surface below, with her head and upper body absorbing the primary impact. The force of the collision catastrophically fractured her skull and cervical vertebrae. The sound carried through stage microphones to the audience and broadcast feed. Nesta's body came to rest motionless on the concrete with no visible movement or response to the surrounding commotion. Blood began pooling beneath her head, spreading across the textured concrete in an expanding dark pattern. The performance was immediately halted as crew members rushed to the scene. Emergency medical personnel arrived within minutes but found no signs of life. Nesta was pronounced dead from severe head trauma and internal injuries consistent with a fall from height. The investigation revealed that the improperly secured cable attached to the motorized hoist, combined with the unexpected activation of the automated lighting sequence, had created the fatal entanglement. The medical examiner confirmed death from blunt force trauma to the head and torso, with the initial impact against the truss contributing to the severity of her injuries. Festival operations were suspended for the remainder of the evening while authorities documented the scene and interviewed witnesses. It was July 19, 2016, at an outdoor industrial demonstration in Ohio. The summer heat had pushed temperatures to 89 degrees, with high humidity creating an oppressive atmosphere around the concrete demonstration area. A large hydraulic press dominated the center of the space, its steel frame gleaming under the afternoon sun. The machine was capable of generating over 50 tons of pressure, designed for heavy-duty metalworking applications. 44-year-old Gully Thrax moved around the equipment with the confidence of someone who had spent decades working with industrial machinery. As an independent metal fabricator, Gully possessed extensive knowledge of hydraulic systems and their capabilities. He was known for his hands-on approach to demonstrations, though his reputation as a showman sometimes led him to position himself closer to active machinery than safety protocols would recommend. The demonstration was being recorded for a technical education segment focused on industrial metalworking processes. Camera operators positioned themselves to capture the press in action while a small audience of industry professionals gathered to observe the equipment's capabilities. Several observers had traveled from neighboring states specifically to witness this demonstration, as Gully had built a reputation for providing thorough, informative presentations. A hardened steel plate, approximately 12 inches square and 1 inch thick, had been selected for the demonstration, a material specifically chosen for its resistance to deformation under extreme pressure. However, during setup, the plate had been positioned incorrectly within the press frame. Instead of lying flat against the press bed, one edge was slightly elevated, creating eccentric loading conditions that would concentrate the immense force unevenly across the plate's surface. No protective barrier had been installed around the press. Gully positioned himself directly in front of the machine, closer than recommended safety distances, to provide commentary and point out specific features of the pressing process. The camera focused on the press head as it began its descent toward the hardened steel plate. The hydraulic system engaged, building pressure rapidly as designed. The press head contacted the improperly seated plate and began applying force. Due to the eccentric loading, the pressure distribution was severely uneven. The edge contact created a fulcrum effect, and as the force increased toward the 50-ton threshold, the plate began to shift within the press frame. The hardened steel plate suddenly slipped under the immense pressure. The combination of the eccentric load and partial edge contact caused the plate to rotate slightly as it was ejected, creating a tumbling trajectory rather than a simple straight-line path. The heavy steel acted as a spinning projectile under the redirected force of the press, launching at an angle directly toward where Gully was standing. The rotating plate struck Gully in the face and upper chest with tremendous force, the spinning motion adding a devastating shearing component to the impact. The blow threw him backward onto the concrete surface. Blood immediately began pooling beneath his head as he lay motionless. The hydraulic press continued its cycle due to programmed timing, completing one additional compression before the operator could shut it down. Witnesses reported that Gully showed no movement after the initial impact. The hardened steel plate came to rest several feet away, its edges bent from the extreme forces, a testament to the immense pressure that had been applied. Emergency medical personnel were summoned immediately, but Gully was pronounced dead at the scene within minutes of their arrival. The investigation revealed that the combination of the hardened steel material, the eccentric loading, and the partial edge contact had created the conditions for violent rotational ejection. The medical examiner confirmed that Gully died from severe blunt force trauma to the head and chest, with the rotating impact causing immediate fatal injuries. It was March 14, 2018, in an urban neighborhood in Louisiana. Heavy rainfall had been falling steadily for over 3 hours, overwhelming the city's aging storm drainage system. Water rushed along the curbs in torrents, carrying debris and creating dangerous conditions throughout the residential area. The temperature held at 68 degrees, but the persistent rain had reduced visibility. 5-year-old Odessa Quist stood near her parent during a live television news report about the flooding conditions. Odessa was an energetic child with natural curiosity about the world around her, often asking questions about things she observed. Her parent worked as a local community coordinator and had been interviewed about neighborhood flood preparedness when the news crew arrived. The news team had positioned themselves on a sidewalk adjacent to a large box inlet, a storm drain structure designed with a rectangular opening wide enough to handle high-volume water flow. Unlike standard curb inlets, this older infrastructure featured an opening approximately 3 feet wide and 2 feet tall. During normal conditions, the inlet was protected by a heavy metal grate, but the intense rainfall had created enough hydraulic pressure to completely dislodge the covering from its frame, leaving the opening fully exposed. The grate lay several feet away on the sidewalk where the force of the water had pushed it. The drainage system was operating under full surcharge conditions due to the volume of rainfall. Water flowed rapidly along the street, forming a stream approximately 18 inches deep that moved with considerable force toward the uncovered drain. The flow carried leaves, small branches, and other debris that had been swept up from the surrounding area. No temporary barriers had been placed around the exposed inlet to warn pedestrians of the hazard. The camera crew focused their equipment on the rising water levels while conducting the interview. Odessa remained close to her parent, but moved slightly toward the sidewalk edge to get a better view of the rushing water. The sound of the flowing water and the ongoing interview masked the subtle changes in flow patterns. A sudden increase in rainfall upstream caused a surge of water to rush down the street with greater volume and speed than the previous flow. The surge created a temporary wave effect that extended beyond the normal water line, reaching areas that had been relatively dry moments before. The surge of water struck Odessa's legs, knocking her off balance and pulling her toward the rushing stream. She fell into the flow and was immediately swept toward the exposed box inlet. The force of the water carried her small body directly toward the wide opening, where she became trapped by the pressure of the continuing flow. Odessa's upper body was forced into the drain opening first, with the water pressure pinning her in place against the concrete structure. Her legs were briefly visible above the surface before the force of the water pulled her completely into the inlet. The wide opening allowed her entire body to be drawn inside, where the flow continued to push her deeper into the drainage system until she disappeared completely beneath the rushing water. Screams from witnesses, including her parent, were audible over the sound of the flowing water. The camera operator immediately stopped recording as people rushed toward the drain opening. However, the force of the water made any immediate rescue attempt impossible. Emergency responders arrived within minutes, but the dangerous conditions and the volume of water flowing through the system prevented immediate access to the drainage network. Specialized rescue teams were deployed to search the downstream portions of the storm system. Odessa was recovered several hours later at a downstream location where the drainage system emptied into a retention pond. She was pronounced dead from drowning, with the medical examiner confirming that she had been unable to escape the water flow after becoming trapped in the storm drain inlet. Thanks for watching. Want to see more? Click on your screen now.